Daf Yud Aleph Amud Aleph will begin Yud Amud Beis, the Mishnah, 4 lines from the bottom. Mishnah Beis Shammai Yomim Be'erev Kol Adam Yatav Yikra. Beis Shammai says Krishma Shalar, a person should recline when he says it and recites it. U'Boiker Yamid, and in the morning Krishma Shal he should stand. Shenemar V'Shach Kumecha. So the evening time is Shalcha, when you're lying down. And in the morning, and that's how, not only when, but that's how you should recite Krishma. Say no, they say no, in any position, there's no specific position. It says, while you're walking, so there's no specific position. What does it mean by that? So basically interprets it, no, it doesn't mean the position that he's at when he says it. It means it means at the time, it's referring to the time he recites Krishma at night, the time when people are going to lie down, in the morning when people are getting up. I was traveling, and it came time for Krishma Shalarvis, and I reclined, like Beis Shammai. And I endangered myself because of the gangsters. You were deserving of that. You were over on Divrei Beis Hillel. You specifically went to recline when Beis Hillel said there's no needs, meaning you followed the opinion of Beis Shammai. You were deserving of that. See the Gemara. We understand that Beis Hillel says, they explain their reason at the time of the Beis Shammai. They say V'shach Kumecha means not in the manner, not in the position to recite Krishma, but rather at the time to recite Krishma. But why do Beis Shammai argue with Beis Hillel? Beis Hillel has a very valid reason. It says, so it's clear that it doesn't mean the position, of reclining or standing. So why do Beis Shammai dispute that? If it simply meant the time of day, it should say clearly morning and evening. What does it mean by shachvor kumecha? It means rishas shchiva mamish, rishas kima mamish. So it means to say, therefore, that it means reclining and standing. It means a position. It means more than the time of day. In addition to the time of day and night, it means the position that he is when he recites it. Well, Beis Hillel has a valid taina. They say it says you're walking. So walking is not standing, it's not reclining. How do they interpret what does it come to teach us? The Gemara answers, as for the following. It says you recite Krishma when you're in your home. But if you're engaged in a mitzvah, if you're not in your home and not free to say Krishma, you're engaged in a mitzvah, Isaac b'mitzvah, potter min a mitzvah, you're potter. Ubelech lecha b'derech, prat lechasan. Ubelech lecha b'derech is to exclude a chasan whose Torah is preoccupied with the mitzvah of pruravu. He's similarly potter, and as Rashi points out, I need a special limud for the chasan, even though that is also under the umbrella of Isaac b'mitzvah, potter min a mitzvah. However, the chasan is not preoccupied with a maisa. He's preoccupied with a machshava. He's Torah. He's in his mind. He's preoccupied and nervous and how to be mekayim this mitzvah of pruravu. That's a different level, a different darga of Isaac b'mitzvah, potter min a mitzvah. I need a special riboy akro. Mikan Amr, we learn that from here. Kindness as a besula potter. If one is making the suin, he's kindness a besula. Then he's potter because he's Isaac, he's torn with the mitzvah puravu. As Almona, where he's not preoccupied, he's not nervous about it to that extent, then he's chayiv and Krishna is chayiv. My mashma, how do we see this from here? What do we see from here? That Isaac ben mitzvah potter min a mitzvah amar papa kiderach. Because it says, it's like going on your journey on the path. Ma derech rishus, just like you're traveling without a mitzvah, you're going rishus. It's your decision. Av kol rishus. So when you're chayv and krishma, it's a v'lechtach b'derech, and something which is voluntary. What do you mean? How do you know v'lechtach is rishus? Maybe he's traveling to perform a mitzvah. And the Torah still is requiring to say Krishma. So how do you see from here that Oisik b'mitzvah is potem in a mitzvah? Some more answers. It shouldn't say b'shiftacha or v'lechtecha, which means that it's yours. It implies that it's your decision. It's voluntary. It should say if it meant to mean that in any regard, in any way, you're chayiv, even when it's not your decision, then it should say Shabbos v'lechas. My b'shiftacha or v'lechtecha, it's mashon you're chayiv in Krishma, where it's b'shavas didach or v'lechas didach. Hu de machayiv. Ada mitzvah patira. It's only when it's your voluntary decision, but if you're going to perform a mitzvah, that you're potem. Correct the Gemara. If that is the case, that we're saying that the chosen, he's kind of basul, he's potter because Isaac ben mitzvah, potter min a mitzvah, and we're extending that patur of Isaac ben mitzvah, potter mitzvah is even tirda, even is preoccupied with a mechshava. So, and in the chosen, he's Isaac in the mitzvah puravu. Then we say his potter, so afilu kind says almana nami. Even if it's not almana, why is it davka a basula? Even if he's marrying a widow, even if he's marrying somebody, a woman that was married beforehand, why should he be chai? Why isn't he potter? He's also being oisik in the mitzvah of puravu. More answers high Torah and the highlight Torah. By kindness as a basula, he's preoccupied. He has more of a tear of a nervousness. By almana, he doesn't. If it's because he's preoccupied, if it's because he's agitated, he's bothered, he's worried, if that's a patur for Kriya Shema, I feel also b'yom nami. Then even if a person, if he's preoccupied and worried because his ship is sinking in the sea, he has a financial loss, there's a stock market crash, he should also be potter from Krishma if tirda is the source of the patur. And maybe you'll tell me that is in fact the case. No. And Ovel, even though he has tirda, it's fadaigid, he's chayiv in all the mitzvahs of Torah, chutz min tefillin, except the mitzvah of tefillin, shari nemer ben per, because at the very beginning of the Avelos, he's mu'ul ba'ofar, he's not in the state of glory. Tefillin are glory, it's not appropriate for him to wear tefillin at that time. Shenemar perecha chavash alecha. The Rebbeinu Shem said to Yechezkel when he was in Avelos, you should not be noeg Avelos like everybody else, and you put on tefillin as opposed to everybody else. So you see though that even though he's torrid, even though there's a tirda, it's not a patur for Krishma. He's still chayiv in Krishma. So why is the chosen potter? The more answers chosen torah tirda the mitzvah. By the chosen, he's torah is tirda mitzvah. Hacha torah tirda the rishus. But over there, even by the ovel, the tirda itself is not the mitzvah. Tavas finos bayam. There's no mitzvah to be upset about his financial situation. But even by the Ovel, he has the chiyuvim of Avelos, but he's not mechuyev to be torrid and to be sad and to be upset. He's mechuyev to conduct himself in Avelos. Over here, the chosen is torrid in how to perform the mitzvah. So his tirda is involving the performance of a mitzvah. So there, he's potter, we say, Oiskim in a mitzvah, potter in a mitzvah. Beishamai, they say that a person is, this Tan Pasuk is telling me that he has to recite Krishma in a particular position. Beishamai, how we boil a prat l'shluchei mitzvah. And Beishamai say that over there it's prat, it's telling you that even shluchei mitzvah are potter from Krishma. I need a special riboy, a separate riboy to tell me that even shluchei mitzvah were sent out to do the mitzvah. They're not actually performing the mitzvah themselves. They're just sent out to do the mitzvah. They're also potter. Well, Beis Hillel says, you're telling me is telling me shluchei mitzvah, and therefore you're saying that it doesn't imply in the manner that he says it. You're telling me that he has to recline when he says Krishma Shalarvis. He has to stand Krishma Shachar. Uvelech L'chavaderech is just telling me this din of shluchei mitzvah that are potter min mitzvah. But memela, and nevertheless, in any event, you see that it says they recite that it says Uvelech L'chavaderech when you're walking on your way. Prat l'shluchei mitzvah, but it shows you, it teaches me nevertheless that while you're walking you can still say Krishma. So therefore, in any event, you see that it's not a specific position that he has to recite Krishma in. Like we said, that Beis Hillel said there's no specific position, so therefore you can stand and recite Krishma. Yeshim v'karim, sit, matim, you can recline v'karim and say Krishma. Holchem b'derech v'karim, like we said of Alech v'derech, you can still walk and say Krishma. Oisem v'lachta v'karim, and you can be oisem v'lacha. You can do your work and say Krishma. We'll see later on at what segments is that applicable. Is that at certain places he does have to stop, but in other places, there are places where he can be oisik m'locha and walk, etc. It's not the entire Krishma, but nevertheless, the V'shach Kumecha, according to Beis Hillel, does not mean that the Krishma has to be in a specific position. They were sitting in one place. Rav Shmuel was reclining. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah Zokov, he was upright. When it came the time to recite Krishma, hit Rabbi Elazar. Rabbi Elazar, he reclined. Now this was Krishma Shel Arvis. Rabbi Elazar was Hashemusa for Beis Shammai. So then it came time of Krishma Shel Arvis, he reclined in accordance with the Shita of Beis Shammai that at nighttime one has to recline. V'zakav Rabbi Shmuel. And Rabbi Shmuel got up. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, Rabbi Shmuel. So he said to Rabbi Shmuel, Shmuel, my brother, I'll give it to Mashal to what this is compared. They tell a person your beard is very beautiful. It should be for the destroyers. It should be destroyed. So what's the Mashal? Kach, here also. Ata calls man shani zakov. When I'm standing, ata muta, you were reclining. Akshav shani hitesi. Now I reclined. Ata zakavta. Now you're standing up. Right? So you are in a position which I would consider, and right now, being that it's evening, being appropriate, being the proper position. Now this entire time you were reclining, and now you're standing up. I'm following the sheet of Beis Hillel. And you are following Beis Shammai. You are reclining right now because you hold like Beis Shammai. But I don't hold like Beis Shammai. I go follow the sheet of Beis Hillel. So now I'm standing up. And additionally, another reason is I'm standing up because I don't want the Talmidim to see that we're both reclining, and they'll think that the halacha is Beis Shammai, and they'll establish that halacha for future generations. So I'm making a point of standing and not reclining. What does he mean to say? And additionally, maybe you'll say, Beis Hillel nami islu matin. Why will you say, well, why did he have to stand up? Beis Hillel say it can be done in any position. So they agree that it can be done in a reclining position, even at night. So why did he make a point and Dafka have to stand up? Even if he holds like Beis Hillel says it's acceptable to do it this way. That's when he was reclining to begin with. He can remain reclining. But now here, you, Rabbi Elazar, you are standing. Now that you're sitting, you're demonstrating that standing is not appropriate. Now Beis Hillel doesn't hold to that. Now Beis Hillel said if you were reclining, you can remain reclining. But if you were standing, you're making a point of reclining. Now you're seeming to indicate that standing is not appropriate. So therefore, v'hashta, you were about hashta v'isa v'hashta muta, and now you're reclining. Amre, I'm concerned. Amre shma mino be'kavei Shammai Yisraelu, that you're holding like Beis Shammai, and therefore you davke have to recline. Shema yiru talmidim v'ikvu halacha l'daris. I'm concerned that the talmidim will say, "Oh, standing is not appropriate for Krishma of Arvis. Your davke is reclining." Therefore, I wanted to stand to show that no, that's not the halacha, because I'm concerned that the Talmud will say, well, you're standing, you're reclining, I'm reclining, they'll think it must be, Krishma Shal Arvis must be reclining, I stood up. Tan Rabbi Cheskel also Gedivra Beis Shammai also, if he did it in the manner of Beis Shammai also, because according to Beis Hillel, you can do it in any position. Gedivra Beis Hillel also. And if he did it according to Beis Hillel also, so even if he was standing and he reclined, he's Yaitse. But Rav Yosef Amar also Gedivra Beis Shammai lo yasav lo klum. He says no. If a person davka was reclining, lo yasav lo klum, he followed the shita of Beis Shammai. The Chachamim were geyser that he's not Yaitse in that manner. If he davka is following the shita of Beis Shammai, the Regaizer, we are not kaveh the halacha of Beis Shammai. He was not yaitza, and it has to be repeated properly. Ifnan misha haya roish of aruba sukkah. We see in a different case, but the same type of idea. Someone who was roish of aruba of a sukkah, v'shulchan b'seich habayis. So he's in a kosher sukkah, and he's in the sukkah, but his table is in the house. Now there's a concern that he might go into the house. If he's the food and the table is in the house, it might draw him into the house. So Beis Shammai paisel and Beis Hillel makshir. Beis Hillel says it's possible for that reason, and Beis Hillel says it's kosher. Amar lehem Beis Hillel Beis Shammai, ma'aseh shehalchu ziknei Beis Shammai v'ziknei Beis Hillel levaker es Rav Yochanan ben Acharon. They went to visit him at Sosh, Sukkah. They found him that he was in the Sukkah, most of his body, his head and most of his body, and the Shulchan was in the house. And they didn't object, they didn't say anything. So you see that it is kosher. They answered back to him, no. Misham Raya, you're bringing a proof from there. It's not a proof. They said if you were noig that way, you were never Mekayim Mitzvah Sukkah. It's also to have the Shulchan and the Bayis. Rav Nachman by Yitzchak Amar also Gedivra Beis Shammai Chayiv Misa. He says that if you're also Gedivra Beis Shammai, it's Chayiv Misa. It's even worse than not Loisav Laklum. Then it's Chayiv Misa. Right. Previously we were saying that they said Im Kena Yisa Loika Yam Mitzvah Sukkah Meyamecha Im Kena Yisa Noig, you're never Mekayim Mitzvah Sukkah. Beis Shammai holds that if you follow Beis Hillel, if you conducted yourself that way, you were not Mekayim the Mitzvah Sukkah. And similarly, according to Beis Hillel, if one followed Beis Shammai, so he wants to prove, therefore also you are not Mekayim the Mitzvah of Kriyishma in that way. Just like Beis Shammai says by Sukkah, they say that is someone who followed Beis Hillel and it was Rosh Hashanah was never Mekayim the Mitzvah of Sukkah. According to Beis Hillel, one who followed the Shita of Beis Shammai and he reclined in the evening, or Davka stood up in the morning, was not Mekayim. But here we're taking it a step further. He says, Yechayiv Misa, he's Chayiv Misa for doing that. For violating, for going against Beis Hillel, the son of Tarfan Ani, Easy Baba Derech, Veitesa Likras Kedivra Beis Shammai. He says he was traveling and he davka reclined on the way to follow the sheet of Beis Shammai. It was the evening. It was a Kante Atzma, Ba'atzmi, B'nei Alistim. And he endangered himself. You were deserving Shavat Divra Beis Hillel because you were over on Divra Beis Hillel. So we see that it's even more than that. Not only that you're not Yoitza, Rabban the Geyser, that you're not Yoitza, but he's Chai Misa for violating. And as Taisus points out over here, there's a Chiddush over here as well. Because in this case, then Beis Shammai is being machmer. Beis Shammai is saying that you have to recite Krishma in this prescribed manner. Now, according to Beis Hillel, They agree that one can recite Krishma in the evening in the reclining. They can recite it standing, but it doesn't have to be that way. There's a chiddush over here that even though essentially Beis Hill says that one can be yotze that way, but if one dafka is trying to be machmir like Beis Shammai, either he's not yotze or he's even chayiv nisa.